Hey y'all, welcome to Parent Empowerment with Mandy Drogin. I'm Mandy. I'm just a mom having real conversations with real Texas parents about what's going on in our classrooms. And today I'm joined by Hillary Hickland, a mom of 4 from Central Texas. We're going to start out by talking about what Hillary experienced when her daughter was in a classroom and her best friend was being encouraged to transition by a teacher. Hillary, thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. I love in your intro how you say I'm just a mom, because that's really how I see myself, as just a mom. I recognize, being a mom is the most important thing I'm ever going to do. And so, we give it our all, our whole heart, and don't hold anything back.
That's right. Speaking of not holding anything back, let's get down to it. Can you tell us about your experience when your daughter was in a classroom and these culture wars and this gender ideology actually affected your family?
Well, just going back to the beginning, my husband and I chose public schools because we want the world in small doses. We want to journey with our kids, to walk through the hard things. We don't expect everything to be perfect or to align with our ideologies or our traditions, but actually look forward to those opportunities and teaching moments. For the most part, everything was fine through elementary school, but when my daughter got to middle school, I recognized that I was just not equipped to battle everything that was coming at us. And I think, nobody expects middle school to be perfect. I think we all probably have stories
hard
of it.
Season of life.
It's hard. It is refining. Kids are finding our identity, our own, and wanting that belonging and approval. So I was anticipating peer issues and just kind of navigating that, the mean girls, just trying to find yourself. And what surprised me the most was that there was such a hypersexualized culture on this middle school campus. And not just coming from the students, but also some of the teachers and the curriculum or the books being read aloud. Really a push for kids to explore how they identify. Are you gay? Are you straight? Are you bi? And from a developmental state, I'm thinking, I have background in psychology, and I'm thinking, well, kids are asexual. We're talking about 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, and certainly school is not the place that should be emphasizing these exterior controversial things apart from the household. It's just not their place, ultimately. So, as you mentioned, one of her close friends was being groomed by 3 teachers who were calling this student by a different name, a pseudonym of another gender, encouraging this student to explore that identity without the parents' knowledge. And at that point, it was a really hard thing to navigate, because here I am wanting to cultivate a relationship with my daughter and trust, which was so important. And so I was grateful that she was trusting me with what she was facing and what her friends were facing. And I did not want to violate or betray that confidence, but also recognizing this is another little girl, another family, and they have no idea. And so as we would talk about it, my daughter would say, Mom, please don't say anything. She was worried about backlash from other friends, from teachers. She was worried about her relationship with her friend being damaged. And so for a long time, I kind of respected that. But as I saw this little girl become depressed, some self-harm behaviors, and ultimately when my daughter shared that this little girl had revealed some suicide ideation, at that point I was like, that's enough. It's better to have not have a friend than her to be dead. Yeah. And so that's just something that we always take seriously. You don't joke or play about that. And so at that point I said, we have to tell. And so we talked to the parents who had no idea, and they went to the administration. And anyway, but the point is that this is a reality and not really something that was on my radar, not something that I was prepared or thought would be an issue in small town Central Texas, rural Central Texas, who, we all have very traditional family values. And even if you don't, you just, the schools have a decent reputation, which is why we chose to live where we live. And, but recognizing, wow, I'm really going to have a much more hands-on, which I did. I mean, I'm vice president of the PTA. I'm the room mom. You tell me what you need. You need Kleenexes. I'll go to Sam's and get a box. So I'm in the mix. I want to be a helper. I want to be part of the solution. So ultimately, when we started to recognize that, and there was a 2-week unit that they did in her honors English class on teen activism. There was books being read aloud that were, maybe lighthearted, coming of age, but the title of one book was called First French Kiss. And my daughter doesn't know what a French kiss is. And you know what? That's my privilege as a parent to introduce these things. And not that I think that we should, keep our kids in a bubble, but I sure didn't think that I would have to worry about adults and teachers who were entrusting to teach our kids academics so that they'll have opportunities when they leave here, not teach them every controversy du jour. And that's really where I felt that we're emphasizing the wrong things. How are we doing in math? How are we doing in reading? Honestly, the scores say not great. Yeah. And so if we only have a certain amount of bandwidth, a certain amount of time in the school year or the school day, why are we emphasizing these things that are so controversial when less than half of our kids can read and do math on grade level?
That's a great question. That is a great question. And I think that's why we see the parent empowerment movement encompass parents from all across Texas, right? It's every parent, regardless of economic status, race, street they live on, and whether they send their kid to a public school or private school or homeschool or whatever it is. Every single parent needs to really know what's going on. That transparency is so, so vital. Well, thank you for sharing that deeply personal story. And can you share with us what happened next?
Yeah. So we recognize, I don't think anyone should have to violate their conscience to send their kids to school.
Yep.
And I recognize that this was not the best choice for our family, for our children. And so we found an alternative, but we can. I would consider that a privilege. Absolutely. That we're in a situation that we have options because we can afford them. Mm-hmm. So my kids are great. They're doing fine in this school. I am so pleased with the rigor and the framework. It's exactly what is right for my kids and my family.
So you pulled your daughter out after that experience.
That's right. But because I had put myself in kind of an atmosphere where I was starting to become aware of issues in public school, other parents were coming to me and sharing their experiences and the things that they were discovering, which is ultimately what kind of thrust me into the public, because it went from just me being like, okay, well, my kids are okay.
Right.
This is about me. My family is fine. And then becoming aware of, or having the light bulb moment, I guess, or just this heart-wrenching moment of, well, what about everybody else's kids? Yep. This is our community. This is our future. And so parents came to me, and I became aware of a display in the middle school library celebrating Banned Books Week. And I can just pause right there. I have major issues with that. Number one, it's a misnomer completely. No books have been banned in the United States since the 60s. Yeah. Every library is a curated collection. There are libraries that are missing some Jane Austen books. Does that mean Jane Austen has been censored or banned?
Right.
No. You can access anything on Amazon. If you can get it on Amazon, it's not banned. Okay. Yeah. And so, or the public library. And so it really irritates me because it's a buzzword.
Yeah.
Catchphrase.
It's a dog whistle.
Oh, 100%. And so, but also the fact that there's this celebration for Banned Books Week. Why are these books banned? Because parents don't want their kids exposed to this stuff. And It's the parents that are saying, hey, maybe this isn't educationally suitable. I don't want my kid exposed to this. And so that's why it's banned.
Yep.
And so automatically, already, it sets up some dissonance between the relationship of the educator and the parent,
Yes.
which is something that we want to avoid. We want to,
And the child and the parent, I would add. That's what
there is. It's like a spirit of rebellion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that it's rooted in. And so it's not like these books are quietly on the shelf.
Right.
They're displayed, they're promoted, advertised, incentivized. The more of these books that you read, the more privileges these students could get in
What?
cafeteria. Oh yeah. And so
they were rewarding the kids for reading these violent and sexually explicit books.
So we need to clarify the books that are on there. They're not classics like To Kill a Mockingbird. Certainly those are like the ones that are put at the forefront, but it's a little tricky because the books that were also on the display were violations of the Texas Penal Code, which says you cannot give obscene material to minors, and violations of the Texas Education Code, which says if you're going to give my child anything about sex, you need a parent's consent. And the one book that just...
Any of these books that we're talking about?
Not
these,
specifically.
not yet.
I'll tell you the one that really just wrecked me. It was called Beyond Magenta.
Okay.
And there's a little bit of a distraction with this because so many of the critics of parents who are concerned about these materials will say, oh, well, you're anti-LGBTQ, or because the character might be a minority, then they assume that it's an issue about race. It's an issue about sexually explicit and age inappropriate material, and those things are distractions from the real issue. And so this book, Beyond Magenta, is an autobiographical narrative of this biological boy transitioning, and talks about what the one quote that really got me was when he was talking about how when he was 6 years old, he was giving oral sex to neighborhood kids and loving it. And so I felt to my knees. That sounds really dramatic, but when you consider, like, I already told you this is the most important thing I'm ever going to do. Like,
Yeah.
and the heart of a mom,
Yeah.
it's hard to communicate. It's hard to put in words.
Yeah.
And so when I saw this and I thought, I mean, kids are going to get exposed to this. This might be their first encounter with sex or sexuality, and it's not the place of apart from their parents. Like,
Right.
they could be in a school library and exposed and have all these questions. And the thing is,
Reiterate again the age level. This was in a middle school.
right? So we're talking about 11-year-olds. Possibly 10-year-olds, depending on birthday.
When they started.
Yeah.
Okay.
But,
I just want to make sure that we're talking about, these are children,
Right.
many of whom have not, like you said, they're asexual at this point. They have not started puberty. They are, they're...
I mean, my daughter at that age was still covering her eyes when her dad and I would show affection.
Yes.
Like, oh, gross.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that is normal.
Right.
That is normal. And so when I just considered, like, all the things that are coming at our kids, what do we want for our children? We want to preserve imagination and wonder, especially in education, and to throw all this stuff on the shoulders of our kids, things that normalize child sexual abuse, incest, rape, drug abuse. That, think about it. Or even if you want to go so far as, like, climate change. So the things of the world that are hard for adults to process and navigate and deal with, we're gonna burden our children with these things, and then think, okay, now go out and dream.
Right. Well, and then we also say, oh, we have a mental health crisis.
Anxiety and depression. No wonder.
No
We're sowing
wonder.
those seeds all day long.
That's right. All day long.
Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly right. Well, thank you again for sharing that. So that kind of takes us down the path where you really said,
that
okay,
was the
my
moment.
kids are okay. And I feel that because I feel the same way. My kids are in an absolutely incredible school that I love, that I'm involved in, and my kids are okay. But that's what this mission that we're on, and we've been working together for years now, is every other child, because our kids are going to grow up and they're going to live in society, and we want to make sure that every single child has the same opportunity to grow and thrive as our own kids.
Right.
Which brings us to, you walked the halls, you beat on the doors of the legislators.
I did.
You demanded to show them.
And I want to talk.
This.
So I started locally. I started because I really thought, oh my gosh, they must not know. Because as soon as the adults in charge realize what our children are being exposed to, they'll pull it. Like, this is obvious.
Right.
This is not a hard one. Every parent can recognize, like, no, I don't want my child exposed to this. This is not age appropriate.
In a big box of books. They put it on the shelves and they didn't know.
So I started locally. I went to the administration. I spoke before the school board. And what shocked me, probably as much as even the sexual content in our schools, was the inaction or the pushback that I would get from adults in charge, the school board trustees.
Can you give us some examples
of
the pushback?
Sure. I was marginalized as just a book banner, a homophobe. Who am I as a mom to tell other people's kids what they can read? And I wanted to say, it's not about my opinion. We're talking about the law, the Texas Penal Code, the Texas Education Code that we're all supposed to abide by. If you even think about the FCC standards, like the material that I was finding. And when I say I was finding, I quoted one book. I found over 100. I stopped counting at 121 books because I was just like, why is it on me to find all this stuff? Why we're trusting our children with adults to be giving them educationally suitable material. Why am I having to fish? I don't read this stuff. I don't know what these books are.
And they asked you to read it, right?
Yeah, that was part of it. So they established their answer was a policy to establish a policy that was a challenge policy where parent on the IC on the backs of the parents, all the onus was on the parents.
Okay.
To find the book, read the book, fill out a challenge form that included cite quotations, suggest an alternative.
They want you to suggest an alternative to pornography?
Yes, that was the process. And then it would go to, you'd have to have a conversation with the librarian who, they're automatically going to be defensive. And
what were you told by a librarian?
The lead librarian of my children's ISD told me that she did not believe any book should be removed. And that was despite me giving her provocative examples in the library that she was directly over, but also saying, like, these are in other libraries that our children as young as 11 are being exposed to.
Some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I'm just going to kind of give a warning. I'm going to hold up some pictures that are kind of graphic.
Yeah.
Let's go to The Handmaid's Tale. Now, just to be clear, when you were preparing for this last night to make sure that we were really talking about what's there, you said 11:30 last night, you went and you checked to see, have some of these books been removed from access from 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds?
Right, because of my journey, after going locally, just realized I'm not getting anywhere. Okay. I'm not able to influence change. So I started going to the state.
Yep.
And being part of protecting children. I served on a subcommittee to stop sexualizing Texas children. Yep. I had the honor of working with Representative Patterson in developing the HB 900, which established mandatory library standards for our public schools. Before they were voluntary. And then we recognized, no, we've got to make these mandatory standards that follow the Penal Code and the Education Code. So now we have a law today. Right. We have a law. There should be the challenge process is great for things that you're like, well, maybe the Holocaust. Gosh, that's really intense. I don't know that children should be exposed to this. It's debatable.
Sure.
Okay. Like, people can have different
or when
opinions.
The age appropriate time to
absolutely.
Introduce it.
We can have discussions about that. And that's a great place for the challenge process. But when it comes to books that break the law.
Right.
there's no conversation. You just pull it.
Yeah.
And so knowing that there is currently a law that's been in place for months, and yet there are books that are still clear violations. So graphic novels means pictures. Other books are essentially erotica and explicit. Sexually explicit, meaning leaving nothing to the imagination. They are still in our public schools. And the examples that I gave you were from schools in my community. So not necessarily the school district that my children were in, but other schools in
Central Texas public
right.
schools.
That's right.
You know, before we talk about this, I want to point something out that you and Representative Patterson said, no, we need to codify this. We need to make a law because what is common sense to the majority of Texans, to the moms and dads of Texas, why would you show this stuff to any child? It actually takes me back to the fact that we had to pass a law in 2019 to mandate the teaching of phonics because we have 50 years worth of data. And it's like, why would our school system not move away from whole language and be teaching phonics? It's really quite astonishing how the system is set up to really strong arm common sense
or parents to maintain the status quo.
That's right.
To preserve a reputation in order to say like, hey, maybe not teaching phonics was the wrong move. It's almost like to admit mistakes means that like it would hinder your reputation. But honestly, like I have so much admiration for people that recognize like, actually we were off. We got this wrong. We're going to make it right.
Right.
I don't think less of that. I think if someone was to come out, an elected trustee was to come out and say, this is unacceptable, we're sorry.
Yes.
I don't know how it happened. We're dealing with it now.
That's right.
Instead of continue to hide behind policies and honestly fear of lawsuits at the expense of exposing our children to sexually explicit material.
Yeah.
We know that damages their development. It's harmful.
Some material sold. This is a book that was available last night to our children in Texas.
It had been found in middle schools.
Yep.
It is in most high schools. It's one of the ones that I find the most often.
It's about a little girl that was sold into sex slavery.
That's right.
Available. Tilt. It was there last night.
Yeah.
26 F words. It's about a minor engaging in sexual activity, drugs, prostitution.
That's right. And that was in a high school, but I think we also need to remind people high schoolers are 14. A very small percentage of high schoolers are 18.
This does not contribute to education.
Well, that
in your own time,
I mean,
to public library, okay. It should not be
the best
in
point,
our schools. Tricks. This one gets a 5 out of 5 rating. Okay.
Means aberrant, yeah.
Okay. So there's different ratings. Let me point that out. We've got 4. 4 out of 5 was tilt. That means not for minors. Okay. Then we have the 5 out of 5. It's the worst of the worst, right? Tricks is about minors that there's child rape, drugs, violence, underage alcohol, adult and child prostitution, lots of F words. That was there.
Yes.
Okay. I guess this is where I really should have given the this. I'm going to show it again. Y'all, this is bad. This brought tears to my eyes when you showed it to me before the show because
it's in a middle school right now.
It's horrifying. And this, to be clear, this book is in middle schools right now in Texas.
Right. And before you said Handmaid's Tale, that was a popular series. You know, what could be so bad? It was on TV, right?
Okay. Let's be clear about what's in it. Here we go.
Yeah, so that's
this.
Violence. Extreme violence.
Rape.
Yeah. Pictures of it.
Violence. Sexual violence.
Nudity. Yeah.
Nudity. Rape. Yeah.
I know.
This is insane.
Right.
And it just keeps going on. You can go, so you pulled a lot of this. You go to the organization Book Looks, which you've shared multiple times.
It's been a fantastic resource. Yeah.
It just keeps going. Oh, this one I've seen talked about, All Boys Aren't Blue.
Yeah.
There's a 15-page narrative in this one about a young boy being raped by his cousin.
That's
15
right.
pages.
That's right.
And it's in our public schools.
Yes. That was one of the few books that we were able to get removed through the Challenge Process. So a group of concerned parents and citizens, we went through the process. We're like, fine, we're going to jump through the hoops. We want to change the process. But in the meantime, let's get moving.
Let's play their game and let's
so
get it going.
That one went all the way up to a level 3 grievance, and where some of the school board members actually voted for it to remain in our schools because
this is bananas.
Yeah. Because the main character is an LGBTQ African American. And like I said, like that's a distraction against what's really 15 pages of a minor being anally raped by a cousin. And the thing is it's not like the narrative says, and that was wrong. I reported it. I got therapy. I went to the police. No. It's normalizing it, saying like, yeah, well, that's what made me who I am. It's part of my journey. And I've heard some of the most ridiculous justifications. You know, you can come up with reasons to justify just about anything.
Sure.
And so some justifications are like, well, what about the kids who have experienced that kind of trauma? I'm like, they need therapy.
They need therapy, and let's go get therapy.
What about the kids who haven't, and all of a sudden now they've been exposed to that? So, I mean, we're talking about, we're traumatizing children in our public school libraries. Yes. If I could tell parents anything, and I will, public school libraries are not safe places. That you can't just assume, oh, it's the library, it'll be fine. And you can't really compare it to to public libraries either, because when I take my kids to the library, I'm right there. I see what they're checking out. I see what they're reading before they check out. So, I mean, there are so many flaws in the policy and the process. Ultimately, we just need an audit.
Well, going to a public school library is not compulsory. Let's be clear. You have to educate your children. And if you're not blessed, like you and I, to be able to have the choices, if you have the resources, the money to be in an excellent school district where parents have the time and ability to get this stuff and fight that fight that you've talked about, if you aren't one of the lucky ones to get in a really amazing charter school that doesn't have this nonsense, if you can't write the check for a private school or someone be at home to homeschool, the children that are in public schools, you're right, they are forced to go there. They are forced to be there. And this is what we're exposing them to.
And I was kind of in a unique situation because we had already removed my daughter. And that's important to know because a lot of parents are afraid to speak up for the same reason that I didn't speak up when my daughter was in public school. I don't want to, middle school's hard enough. I don't want to put my kids in the limelight for any kind of retribution or the spotlight for anything negative. You just don't want to do that. And so a lot of parents are like, okay, well, I'll just keep my kid out of this. But it's a culture that it facilitates and
of silence. It's a culture of silence
and fear,
and because parents are afraid, right?
And also those who are being exposed to this stuff. It is a hypersexualized culture. If you don't think that this permeates you think it just stays in the library, and not only that, there are books included in curriculum and some of like the honors class. There's one book, it's called Out of Darkness. It's an award winner, which that means nothing to me anymore. If anything, it just means this book pushes the envelope and you should look thoroughly. That's what an award winner means these days. And this Out of Darkness book, it talks about like a girl who is raped by her dad and her brother, and it uses the N-word. It's just vile. And I think, why are we promoting this? And what value does it have? Literary value does it have to our developing youth? But that's in some curriculum. A lot of the dual college credits classes. And so that was one of the arguments that I heard. Well, we can't get rid of this book because it's part of our college credit class curriculum.
Tell the college we're not doing
that's
that.
A whole other that's a whole other battle. I've one battle at a time. But I think what people need to recognize, parents, also community members. I mean, like our tax dollars are paying for this.
That's right.
We bought these books.
Right.
Are taxpayers okay with that? And what they need to recognize is that individual ISDs, just because they're a law, like a law is only as good as its enforcement.
That's right.
And I trust it. I think what's happening is that parents and citizens are losing faith in our public schools to do the right thing, for our kids. And that's unfortunate. And that's not a blanket statement. We have wonderful educators. We have wonderful schools, as we said, but we have to be vigilant. And that's unfortunate. But that's where we're at.
That's where we're at. And that's why we talk about it, is because you're exactly right. We have amazing educators and school leaders who really want to do the right thing. And quite frankly, they're battling against this too.
Right.
Because they're getting the pushback. They're being called the names, and they're being threatened, and they're getting guidance from associations and organizations. You know, I've had several actual school board members reach out because they've gotten guidance from TASB multiple times, and they're like, well, if you do it this way, you're going to get sued by the ACLU. Right. We can look at KDISD right now when they're kind of saying, we don't want to play the gender pronoun game here. We're not going to enforce this. We're not going to let boys into the girls' locker room, whatever. And so it is something that's really hard. And I know we've got some amazing leaders in the schools. You and I were talking earlier about a school leader really close to you in Central Texas who, when she saw and found out, she had the ability and said, out, which is what we want. And we want to support them and empower great leaders.
It takes courage.
It does. It takes courage to fight back and to know there are certain people that might call you names. They're loud, and there are only a few, but they will do it. You stand your ground because Texas supports you, right?
And the focus always, can we just default to protecting children?
That's right.
I mean, I don't care where you're at on the political spectrum. Right. I don't care if you're a parent or if you're not a parent. I don't care. Can we just all agree that children should be protected, and that obviously this is harmful. Harmful to the development of children. And so, I mean, that's why it seemed like the easiest battle. And I was so shocked by the lack of courage, or those who are in positions of influence, whether elected officials or not, that were essentially squandering their influence, and they were not doing the right thing out of a place of fear, or the desire to, maintain a good reputation and maintain the status quo. And but we've really got to take an honest look at what's at stake.
100% correct. That's it. And what's at stake is the next generation of Texas. It's the future. It's our children who are growing up, who are being exposed to this in their developmental years. And it's obviously, again, when we tie in, you mentioned our scores are down. The test scores just came out. Massive drops, particularly in science, math. It's pretty astonishing that the amount of money that we're asking taxpayers to invest, and yet we're having to spend so much time instead of figuring out how to truly educate and prepare our children to launch and be happy and successful, thriving Texans. That this is what we have to fight. Why?
Right. Well, and I mean, you already started looking at a broader scope of the even greater impacts of this. This is just the most obvious example.
Sure.
I think when I started to get more involved in the reality of our education crisis and protecting children and empowering parents, I just recognized there's no way. I felt like I was playing whack-a-mole. That every time something would come up, it was just stop doing this. This isn't good for kids. And I really felt consumed by this this horizontal battle, and it was overwhelming. And it really took a moment. I'm a person of faith. I love Jesus. It's important to me. But it just stepping back and saying what's the overarching solution here? And so stop looking horizontally and start looking kind of vertically. And to me, it's that parents have to be empowered with their children's future. And there's nothing more important than choosing the best education for their kids. And so recognizing that the school choice is a huge piece of the solution to this issue. And for most people, public schools are going to be the best choice. That's wonderful. We want them to be the best they can be. They are not the best they can be. It's not just with this, but you can look at the outcomes. Like,
Yes.
we're missing something
Yes.
in a big way.
Yep.
I mean, if we're thinking, we're talking about 50%, the outcomes are showing that 50% cannot read and do math on grade level across the state of Texas. That's huge. That is unacceptable. No one can be okay with that. But we're not turning our backs on that. We're opening it up to opportunities for those who need something different for whatever reason. You know, whatever reason. It could be rigor. It could be, you know,
Bullying,
Yes.
IEPs, all sorts of.
so many different things.
Yeah.
The fact is, and to not do that is almost an unrealistic expectation for public schools, because we're putting the burden to be everything to everyone on them, and that's not fair. That's not realistic. And so the fact that you could open the door for options for families to just explore and choose what's best for them is a win for everyone.
Yeah.
Because when you have choice, then you automatically invest in what you chose. You know, I go to this grocery store, the one that I choose is the best. And, you know, you're just committed to that. And so I think so many other elements of school choice are positive and will enhance across the board education. It's a really important thing. And I think the majority of Texans are seeing that.
Absolutely. So, one more question before we wrap up. I want to know what you would like to say to the parents and the patriots of Texas who are listening to you, have heard your story about how and why you got involved in fighting for your kids, but really for every child. You know, this is about empowering parents all across our great state. What would you like to say to them?
So anytime that we become aware of a problem, you know, the books, it hit me deep. It didn't hit everybody, and that's okay. I'm not mad that everyone isn't compelled by this, but I was. And so what I would want to tell parents is that when you become aware of a problem, or something hits your heart and you're compelled by it, that is an invitation to be part of the solution, whatever that looks like. And so you just look for, how can I partner in being part of the solution? This is a clear problem, and I'm going to devote my time, my energy, whatever position that I've been put in. You know, we all have a sphere of influence, and I believe that, like, there's purpose in that we each have potential and destiny to make things better and good and right for everybody. And so when whether it's a parent, taxpayer, like, and it's so fulfilling to be part of that, part of the solution, making it better. When you become aware of that, to then be willing to put things behind it, to step into that, and be part of the solution, whatever that looks like. Whether it's, you know, locally, and I think that's where it starts. I mean, it starts in our own home, but then it branches out to, like, our close-knit friends and family, and then branches out to, you know, a little bit larger, our neighborhood, and then it just expands as, you know, that solution grows. And I mean, that's how we bring about meaningful change.
Thank you for all of your efforts. Thank you for being a part of the parent empowerment movement that has swept Texas. Thank you all for joining us on Parent Empowerment with Mandy Drogin. And now you have the power.